Hi everyone. I'm back. Same night, different video, different book. So I recently finished this, which is Nightbirds on Nantucket by Joan Aiken. Um, I had this book read to me by a teacher in the fourth grade, and I really didn't remember anything about it at all, other than I remembered that the main character's name was Dido, and that she was kind of like a tomboy character, with short, at some point she's like dressed as a boy, and she has short hair. So those are like, child to me, that those were all my favorite things. So those things stuck out to me, and I also remembered like I liked the vibe of the book, but I really didn't remember anything else about the book at all. And then I was passing by one of those free little libraries, and I saw it in there, and I was like, "Oh, right, this book." And I'd totally forgotten about the book. Um, and so I grabbed it and I read it. Overall, I would say that the vibes and the feelings you get from reading this book are way better than the book's plot itself. The plot is honestly it's trash. It doesn't start out as trash, but it ends trash. Um, so I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, let's get into the review. So, in terms of the setting, it takes place in the 19th century, um, and partially it takes place on a whaling ship, and then the other half takes place in Nantucket. Our main character, Dido, was on some ship, and somehow, I don't remember how, ends up in the ocean and passed out in the ocean. And then this whaling ship, that's a United States whaling ship coming from New England, but doing their whaling globally, comes across this girl who's passed out in the water. They rescue her. She's asleep for a very long, maybe months, I don't know. She's like in a coma or something, on this very chaotic whaling ship. And then she comes to, she wakes up. She's introduced to some side characters. There's like a teenage boy side character. She's like a little younger. Maybe she's like 10, I guess, maybe. So we're introduced to this like teenage boy side character who, he mostly is just like a plot mover. He's the one who rescues her and takes care of her, and then later he helps resolve the conflict towards the end of the book. But there's sort of like these weird, spooky secrets that she starts to notice that are going on the ship. And the guy who's running the ship, the captain, it turns out that his young daughter, who's the same age as Dido, is also on the ship. And she was supposed to go with them. And so was her mom. But the mom was super terrified of being on a ship. But seemingly they convinced her to go anyway with her daughter, and then she died. Before the book even starts, she died. So this has caused the daughter to be just terrified of being on the ship. She's like, this ship killed my mom. We're not meant to be in the ocean on a ship. This is a bad place for me. And she just like refuses to leave her cabin. And so the captain of the ship, who's this weird, he's like a very weird, kind of sinister, lonely Quaker. Is he Quaker? I think he's Quaker. I don't know. No, I don't know if he's Quaker. I don't know. Actually, I don't think he is Quaker, but he's like some New Englandy Christian. He's more extreme. That's why I don't think he's Quaker, because he seems like an extremist. But anyway, he's New Englandy and Christian. That's all you need to know. Anyway, so he basically sees this, gets to know Dido when she wakes up, and he's like, you seem like a spunky, rambunctious character. Maybe you can get my daughter to leave her freaking cabin and not be so depressed. So he basically employs the aid of Dido to convince this girl to come out of the cabin. They become friends. She successfully convinces her to come out of the cabin. As as this is all going on, Dido is noticing that the captain of the ship is like completely uninvolved with his daughter at all. He doesn't seem to care about her or anybody else. He's just fixated on trying to find this pink whale that he swears exists. So it's supposed to be a whaling ship where they're like, you know, killing whales and getting their blubber to make oil and fuel and stuff. But he's not really worried about that, even though that should be the objective of the ship. He's just searching for this one pink whale that may or may not exist. And so the daughter is like, I need to get off the ship. And the captain, the dad, is like, yes, you do. I'm going to drop you back off in Nantucket, and you're going to go live with my sister, Aunt Tribulation. And the daughter's like, no, I remember staying with Aunt Tribulation when we were little kids, and I hated her, and she's so mean, and you can't leave me with her. And so she makes Dido promise to stay with her, at least until she gets settled with this mean Aunt Tribulation. So they go back to Nantucket, and Dido promises to stay with the daughter. The daughter's name is Dutiful Penitent, which is a very early American Christian name. Dutiful Penitent. And she's like obsessed with reading her lessons and doing everything perfectly, and just living without any sort of sin. And she's also afraid of everything. But so anyway, Dido goes with Dutiful. They call her Pen in the book because Dido's like, I'm not calling you Dutiful Penitent. I'm just going to call you Pen. So she goes with Pen back to Nantucket, and they go with the aunt. And the dad's supposed to stay with them and help get them acquainted, and he just dips. He just like leaves in the middle of the night with no warning to go look for this pink whale. So our two main characters are stuck with this woman who's horrible and who doesn't actually seem to be their real aunt. Well, Pen's real aunt. And so as the story goes on, it's revealed that she's actually an imposter. And they have to figure out why she's an imposter and what's going on. Meanwhile, Dido is trying to get back to England. That's where she's from. So she's like, okay, cool. Like, once I get you settled in and once we find the real Aunt Tribulation and get you to safety, like, I'm leaving. I want to go back to England. So they're living with this imposter aunt. The aunt's making them do, like, insane amounts of very cruel labor and just yelling at them and abusing them all the time. And as time goes on, they realize this is where the book just becomes trash. They realize that the aunt, the person who's pretending to be the aunt, is actually a British woman who's I'm gonna pronounce this wrong, but she's a Hanoverian, which I guess was a group that was trying to take over the king of England, like trying to take over the government there, the monarchy there. So it was like a rebel group, I guess. I didn't, to be honest, I didn't read that much about the background. I just kind of took the book for what it was. But so the imposter is trying to take over the government of England, this woman. But she's in Nantucket. She's not in England. She's in Nantucket. And this is where the book goes really just completely insane. So one day, while they're doing their different chores, they accidentally end up in the woods because one of the sheep gets away from them and they have to go find the sheep. The two girls, right? And so Dido and Pen are chasing down this sheep in the woods, and they run into this long pipe thing. It feels like this giant, almost like an oil pipeline. Of course, they didn't have that then, right? But it feels like a elevated oil pipeline. They're like, what the hell is this? And so that's like this weird mystery. They don't know what it is, and they follow it for a long time, but they can't find the end of it because it's so long. So eventually they give up looking for the end of it, and then they run into this guy who has like a strange accent that neither of them are used to, like not from the United States, also not from England. It's some different accent that they're not used to, European. And he's like in the woods, and he asks them for some food, and he's like seemingly maybe homeless or being mistreated. They don't really know. So they go bring him some food, and they have some further conflicts with the imposter aunt. But fast forward, they basically figure out that the giant pipe is actually a massive cannon gun, and the guy who's in the woods is like this mad scientist guy who I think is German, although it's kind of ambiguous, but I think he's German, who's kidnapped by the British rebels to build this giant cannon that can supposedly shoot a cannonball across the ocean into Buckingham Palace and kill the King of England. Precisely. It's only going to kill the King of England. And the building that he lives in. From Nantucket. So that's like this big conspiracy. That's why there's the fake aunt, and then we find out there's other people, there's other like British rebels that are also like living in Nantucket who are planning to murder the King of England and take over, but from Nantucket. And then they stop this from happening. They tell the mayor, and the mayor doesn't believe them at first. But then eventually there's enough evidence, and the mayor believes them, and so he helps them, and they crack the case. Also, not only does his gun supposedly fire over the ocean so precisely that it could kill the King of England, also the gun is so powerful that it's going to make Nantucket physically move and slam into New York City. And that's the thing that makes the mayor decide to take action. He literally is like, I don't care if the King of England dies. I don't live in England, and that's not my king, so I don't give a crap. Go ahead, kill him. I'm not worried about that. But then when the kids are like, no, you don't understand. We're going to end up being like part of New York City. And he's like, oh no, I refuse to be part of New York City. Then he decides to take action. So that's the book. And then the way that they solve the problem is they strap the giant gun to the back of the pink whale, which does in fact exist. It comes back later. They strap the gun to the whale, and the whale swims the gun out of place. And that's how they save the day. And that's the book. I personally, I don't mind magical realism if it starts at the beginning of the book and like stays with it. Something about like a book or a movie starting out very realistic and being very realistic for like more than half of the story, and then suddenly there's something completely unbelievable thrown into it. I've always hated that. It was in another book I read when I was a kid. I think it was called The Whipping Boy. It's a similar thing, and I also hated that. So that really just instantly ruined the book for me. The vibes of this book were cool, and the illustrations, it's for younger readers, so there are pictures in this book. Not a lot, but the ones that there are, they're pretty cool. And it's definitely like a spooky. I would read this. I mean, I wouldn't read this, but if you're gonna read this, if this sounds interesting to you, I would read this in October. The drawings are really cool in it. But let me find one of the ones that's like more spooky. It's definitely got that, like, New England-y witch. This is the imposter aunt running on top of the gun, trying to cut the ties from the whale so that the whale can't pull the gun into the ocean and stop her plot to kill the King of England, which I think is hilarious. But anyway, the illustrations are really cool, and it definitely has like a spooky New England-y vibe to it, which I think is cool. Here's the whale, just doing its. There's the pink whale, just doing its thing over there. I don't really have much more to say about this book, except for there are two things I took issue with. One of which is there was only one black character in the entire book, and he was like a cook on the ship, but they called him not the N-word, but the other N-word, and I just was like, I don't know, I wasn't alive during the 60s, but I don't know, it didn't seem like they should still be saying that. Definitely caught me off guard. And also, there was no reason for him to even be a character. Like, there was no point to him even being a character. I just feel like they threw him in as, like, a part of the setting, which I think is gross. Like, either make him a real character, or don't. Or there's no reason, for you to have included him. So that was a problem. But then another thing that really bothered me more, because it was more a problem, like, consistently throughout the book, is there's this kind of sexism that exists that I used to buy into, and as I was reading it, I was like, oh, I know why I liked this book, because I was a little sexist dick. Which is, like, a lot of times when you have a really strong girl character, she will be contrasted against a very feminine, weak character. And the main character, that's the strong girl character, will have a more masculine presentation. And this is something that I often buy into, or at least I did before I spent some time analyzing it, because I'm a masculine, or at least more masculine leaning, sometimes girl person. And so I relate to those characters. And I also had a deep jealousy of some of those feminine girls that sort of fit more into, like, what society decided a girl was supposed to be like, because they weren't getting picked on in some of the same ways that I was getting picked on. And, I felt some kind of way about that, and then I took it out on them, and I bullied a lot of them, in a way that was really shitty and very unfair. And that's what a lot of these stories do. They're starting to get better now, but anytime you look at, there's like so many stories where the main character is like a tomboy girl, and there's a sidekick that's like a weak, feminine girl that needs to be taught how to stand up for herself and taught not to be afraid of everything. And it's just like, no, you can be very feminine and girly and have long hair and like dresses and also be a badass and be strong and not afraid of everything. Like, it's a false dichotomy that this book plays with the entire time. And the character Pen, she's so afraid of literally everything. Like, she's afraid to even tell the most baby white lie to literally save her life when she's about to get murdered. She's afraid of, like, looking at the water. She's afraid of, she's literally afraid of everything in the book. She's also a huge tattletale. Like, the entire time she's tattletaling on Dido, and she's very annoying. And the book just keeps hitting on the fact that she's very feminine over and over and over again, like that she's prissy. So I just think that's really shitty. And then on the flip side, the main character, who's very strong and spunky and charismatic, also has their hair cut like a boy and wears boys' clothes, which you could have your hair cut like a boy and wear boys' clothes and be afraid of everything, and cry all the time, like me. So it's just not. I'm just tired of that. I'm just tired of that dynamic. And I think it's especially toxic when it's in kids' books because, kids buy into that shit. I did. So yeah, that was annoying. I don't think I have anything else to say about this book. Cool vibes. It would make... No, it wouldn't make a good movie. The plot's terrible. No? Yeah, it's just bad. But I like the vibe. I like the illustrations. I like the name Dido. It's a cool name. Don't read this. Okay. Bye.